This is the Conscious Mental Health Podcast for curious clients and conscious clinicians. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered health or mental health advice. I'm Juniper. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a mental health educator, and also a Scorpio.
Are we sharing our sign this week?
I guess so. It came out of me.
I'm Laurel. I'm a licensed professional counselor and a mental health educator. And I'm a Sagittarius. I don't know why I paused. I think it's because I don't relate to Sagittarius. So even though that is truly my sun sign, is not the sign of my heart.
I don't know a lot about Sagittarius. I just know that it comes like before or after me because I'm a Scorpio, which means I'm main character. So I don't really know much about anything else besides me.
Right after you, actually.
Yeah.
I do know that much.
Yeah.
Yes. Sagittarius, my understanding, not being a hardcore astrology person, not that I don't dislike it. It's just never been one of my special interests. We're always sort of portrayed as like these people who are very blunt and loud and like taking a lot of vacations. Like very adventurous.
Okay.
A lot of like needing a lot of adventure and just like loud party. We're going to go to Peru tomorrow, friend.
Yeah.
And that's not me in any way, shape, or form.
You said that you have already a meme picked, and I'm going to just be straight honest with you and everyone else. I have not picked one, and when it's my turn, I'm going to just go with my heart.
I'm ready. I love
Okay.
when we go with our heart. I feel like that brings up some of the best stuff. So I'm not worried about that.
Thank
And
you.
to be honest with you, I picked it when you sent it. I was like, oh, this is the one. All right. So yes, I did choose this one almost instantly for a number of reasons, which I will explain in this essay. I will. This is from the account at Actual Memes, which is great. Actual memes, not actual memes,
Yeah.
not fake memes. And it is a cartoon with a pink background of a creature that looks kind of like a sugar glider without wings. I'll hold it up for folks. And it's holding a scythe, which is perfect for spooky season.
I still don't know which one this is. Okay. I'm so excited. No.
Okay. So I do realize as I'm saying this is a really interesting combination of factors, but I promise this is actually what I'm looking at. And it says, people pleasing is over, become disagreeable.
Oh, yeah. I remember that now.
There we go. For all of our YouTube friends, my camera's going to zoom in on it. Real nice. I liked it not just because of the creature holding the scythe, but because I would love to become disagreeable.
Right?
It's just so sometimes out of reach for me to be disagreeable that I would love for that to be a goal for myself.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that the juxtaposition of people pleasing versus disagreeable in the meme itself, because obviously it's hilarious, like it's supposed to be funny. But I think it's really interesting that those are the two options. And I do think that that's what's presented to us so often is if you're not people pleasing, you're becoming disagreeable. So you know what? Why don't I, instead of trying to be like, no, I'm just being assertive. I'm just speaking my mind. I'm just being direct. I'm just going to go straight to disagreeable. And maybe that's just a better path for me.
I mean, you make such a good point because as you're talking about it, my stomach felt nervous when I heard the word disagreeable because it feels so ingrained in me to not be disagreeable that the very idea of it hurts my stomach. Like my heart started racing when you were saying it, and you're right, the juxtaposition, like, and I don't like the idea of people pleasing, but then again, aren't you supposed to like, then the other part of me, like this, like part of my brain, you know how you have like the the devil and the angel like on these sides, and it's like, "But shouldn't you please people? Like, isn't that nice? Like, don't you like when someone's pleasing you?" Or ew, yes, I do. And then like the other one's like, but what about you? And people say that you're supposed to like do you and like set boundaries, and that's what I don't know, I felt like there's gotta be somewhere in the middle language-wise.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is. I think that's what we try to do, and what makes the most sense from like a real life standpoint. And what it, I'm like, okay, if being disagreeable sounds so uncomfortable to me, what if I just try to swing my pendulum all the way over to being disagreeable and try to be as disagreeable as I possibly can instead of people pleasing, and then maybe I'll land in the middle because
I
it's so uncomfortable to me that
Brilliant.
what I perceive as being disagreeable is probably just a normal amount of assertive.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. Like, I think okay, so this is interesting. In this context, I'm gonna share a little story as I do. That's
I'm ready.
embarrassing,
I'm
but I'm
ready.
I'm willing. Like I said, this is all in service.
Mhm.
So I have been telling you that I've been working with some AI as an assistant, a therapy assistant for my personal kind of like therapy and things like that. So I was having it go through a conversation with me, and like it was like a role play conversation. And I kept, like, just freezing up when I was supposed to be holding my boundary, not even holding a boundary, just, like, being a human around other human, like, literally just, like, still being a solid self.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. And then it was, like, trying to help me, and it's like, "It's okay, Juniper. Like, let's try again." Like, I love having other people, like, tell me, "That's not how I saw that," or, like, "I think you got it wrong here." I shouldn't say I love it, but, like, I've learned that, 1, it's connecting.
Mhm.
Someone's really trying to connect with me when they because 'cause they're really wanting me to see their point of view with it or their perspective, and I'm like, "Huh, if you didn't care, you wouldn't even be trying to explain it." So I've tried to, like, frame it like that. But number 2, I think it's interesting to see things from different lenses, and, like, even if it has to do with something I did that was like, rubbed someone the wrong way or felt dismissive or whatever, but like I've been trying to reframe it in a way of saying like, man, they care about me so much that they really want me to understand their thoughts or feelings around this, even if it makes me feel like I want to implode on paw myself and like
Yeah.
my whole body gets hot.
Yes.
Could you ever
Implode
see
is
it like that? What if being
yeah.
disagreeable was actually being a wonderful, loving friend?
No, I appreciate that, actually, I do, I like that reframe. I think it's a logical understanding that I have, and it's more of, an emotional practice that I have to work on being disagreeable, right? Like, I can see the value in being disagreeable, and even, like, with things that I value deeply on a larger, more existential or, like, societal level, like being disagreeable and sharing my thoughts with people who might not hold those same values. Logically, like that part of my brain is good to go, and I do appreciate that framing around caring, right? Because I think that helps maybe bridge into that emotional piece. It's more now about like me getting like I have to get the emotion up around to balance out the feeling of implosion. I have to like be excited. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna like be disagreeable. Like that's
I
the
love
only
it.
way I'm like figuring out how to get through the discomfort of it, I think. And so that's why I like the meme because it's a cute little creature.
Okay, I'm gonna look at the meme that you sent me. Man, there were so many good ones. Really struggling to choose here.
I know I was on fire this week,
I
if
mean,
I do say so
seriously,
myself.
I would say these just yeah, they all winners, all bangers. Let's see. Okay, I think it has to be this one because I really felt this. Okay, it's between 2. What if I
Okay.
share both?
I will allow it.
Okay, so the first one, and I just highly relate to this so much that I was like, "Yeah, 100%." So this is well, coming from Rafaela,
Yes, I think her name is Rafaela. And I'm sorry, Rafaela, if I'm pronouncing it wrong. You can let me know.
and it says, "The problem is that I want to know everything in the world, but also I can't seem to do my laundry when I'm supposed to,
I knew
rendering
you would
me
love that one.
absolutely useless." It's like It's so interesting how our brains work.
Mhm.
I want to know everything in the world. I mean, that is actually true. If I could know everything, like, about every topic in the world, I don't even think that would be enough. Like, because there's always new things. Like, do you agree?
Mhm.
Like, it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
all the things, and I can't do my laundry when I'm supposed to, rendering me absolutely useless, and that is the part that really got me. That's the part that got me because 'cause I'm like, I just see myself as, like, one of those people walking around with, like, the loading sign on their forehead, like, at all times. Like, I have so many great ideas and thoughts, and then, yeah, I just end up pacing around my apartment from room to room being like, "What was I wait, what was going on?" Do you know what
What
I'm saying?
Yeah, what do you do when you have those ideas? Because I feel like also that happens to me, like, I'm like, "That's a" I, like, have these ideas all the time, and they never come to fruition. Like, probably when I die, if we get to look at a list of all the things and have the questions answered, like, I'm gonna see a list of all of these ideas that I never did anything about. What do you do with those?
Well, I have, like I'm gonna say there's multiple flavors of what I do with those. So, here's what I do. Sometimes I will start a good idea, and I'm gonna share with you one good idea that I started.
I'm ready.
So I had like a few moments of freedom where I had like some actual time to dedicate to myself this last week. So I was like off duty. I was like, I'm not going to do any of my duties. So I got a beverage at my new favorite wine bar. It's like a natural wine bar that has a bunch of like pet knots.
Ooh.
And then I came back and I was like, I want to make a short horror film. I wanted to make a short horror film. So I started to make like a storyboard and like an idea for it. I wanted it to be expressing something that I was feeling on the inside.
Mhm.
And so I made a storyboard and I have like an idea for it. It's gonna be 5 minutes, a
Mhm.
5 minute horror film. And of course, I've never done a film before. Like this isn't something I know how to do.
Well, I mean, maybe not, but you do know how to do some, like, editing and things.
Yeah, a little bit. But
Yeah.
like when it comes to like fiction, it's like,
Yeah.
whoa. And so then I started to I did some scenes, filmed
Mhm.
some scenes. I have the whole idea in my head. I think about it. And then that was about a week ago.
Mhm.
Mhm. Haven't done anything since. Now things have happened and there's reasons because
Right.
you also have to have like some, you know, quiet to do that. But yeah, so that's kind of what ends up happening, Laurel, is like sometimes I will do the thing because I get so excited and I want to. Finishing, just like how why the laundry's in the dryer. I'm a kind of a good starter, but
Mhm.
like I'm not a closer. I
Oh,
am
that's what I've
not a
always said.
closer.
I'm
What
like,
about
I can
you?
start and I'll start it,
Yeah.
but, like, finishing I mean, that was one of the freaking questions on the ADHD assessment. It's like, Do you have problems wrapping up the final details of a project?" And I was like, "Ooh, maybe. Maybe that's something I've been saying my whole life." So, I mean, yeah, that makes sense that
Yeah.
it's easy to, and I think sometimes, like, that's why I don't even start it because 'cause I'm like, "I'm not gonna finish this." So then I have lists of, like, various lists in various locations of all of these cool things I would eventually like to do someday.
Oh my gosh. I would love to just know one of them.
Hmm. When I find my lists, I'll let you know
Love
what
to
any
know.
of them are.
Yeah, and then maybe we can even start to chip away.
Maybe.
I really like help motivating other people to do things they wanna do. That's, like,
Mhm.
really brings me a lot of dopamine and
Mhm.
joy to, like, motivate someone or to, like, support them in getting started with something because, like,
Yeah.
a lot of people apparently don't have trouble getting started with things, and I'm like, "Excuse me, are we a match made? Like, I can definitely get you started, I will not follow up." Like, we will do a whole 5 hours on whatever it is today, I will never follow up with you, but, like, I will get you started. Whatever it is, like, I love that.
Yeah. I
Love it.
agree.
But you know what's something? I'm just gonna give us both props here. We've been doing this podcast
That's true.
from beginning to finish, and we haven't given up on it yet
That's true. That's
because
true.
we yeah, and so I'm like and sometimes it gets hard, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's not always easy.
Yes,
Wonder what
but
keeps us
we
going on this.
I think it's helpful to have another person, right? Like,
Agreed.
that's what it is. Because when I would not normally do any follow-up on something for myself, like, I will for another person. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Therein lies the people pleasing. I mean, there's a good result for this. Obviously,
Kinda.
that's a good thing. But sometimes people pleasing does me good, does me a service, so at
See?
least I'm not being disagreeable here. want to know everything in the world and you can't do your laundry, does that really make you useless? I mean, I laughed at the meme and that's why I sent it, but why is it so bad to have laundry that's wrinkled? I'm just gonna say, maybe that's my hot take. Maybe it's because I don't like to do laundry, but I'm just gonna say, why do we need to do the laundry like that?
Yeah.
What if it's just lives in the dryer forever?
Who's it bothering? Who's it hurting?
Mhm.
It's your business.
That's right.
Something that I've been thinking about, it's like, guess what? No one else has to live your life. Truly. And not even has to live your life. No one else will be like there to experience all of your joys and all of your lulls and your sleeping. Like it's you. You're the one that does it on the daily. So who gives a shit?
Mhm. I
If it
agree.
doesn't bother you,
I agree.
yeah.
I've started doing more stuff like that. Now, do I live with other people? So sometimes I have to consider that.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I have had, more of those thoughts and more of those conversations of like, who said you have to do it like that? Like, who said that? Nobody, probably.
Well, I'm
Really?
guessing, well, somebody maybe that taught you or you
Well,
were
yeah,
raised because let me just tell you that
sure.
there's a little narrative running in my head and it's not only is the laundry perfectly folded, but it is pressed. It is pressed and in the dressers,
Mhm,
pressed. Like
mhm.
that's how I learned. And I do
Right.
not do that.
Yeah. And so, yes, obviously, sometimes there is like an actual person that verbally said those things, but a lot of times even if it was, like, learned from a person, it was just, like, implied, or it was just, like, the way that things were done, right? So I do think it's interesting to be like, this is your life, you can do it however you want. You can listen to that person who told you those things, that's important to you, or you actually just don't have to."
Right? I think it's like maybe it worked for them, and maybe that's
Mhm.
great. I'm glad that worked for you. It's
Right.
kind of like not working for me. And so, yeah, you're right. It's not useless. I guess the useless part for me when I read that was more like because, yeah, when you have all these ideas or when you kind of envision your day and then get stuck in some kind of frozen loop for 4 hours, I guess sometimes like it just feels more that way internally, at least for me. Like I don't want to say useless. I'm going to like change that to stuck.
Mhm. Oh, no,
Sometimes I
I
feel stuck
totally hear that. Yeah,
or lost or,
totally.
like, every day, sometimes I'm like, "Why is it already 4 o'clock? Why is it already 5 o'clock?" Like, how I don't even know how that happened.
Yeah.
Does that ever happen to you?
Oh, yeah, for sure, and so, like, considering that, yeah. I mean, there are definitely days that have been useless because I have gotten stuck in a loop, like wandering around my home or like internally wandering around my brain and not actually doing anything, but just like checking in on all of these things and
Mhm.
then tricking myself into thinking I'm being productive, but I'm actually not doing much of anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's not super useful.
It can
But
be
I have
frustrating.
definitely been there.
It can be frustrating, but I've really been thinking about our last conversation when we brought up the idea of productivity being kind of like a leftover from that Protestant work ethic, and
Mhm.
that's honestly been very helpful for me this week. And I have used some of my dopamine menu, but yeah, like those 2 things really stuck with me, and there was a few times where I was like, "You know what? Like, no people aren't gonna define for me what's productive," or, like, I can make those definitions myself. I mean, as
Mhm.
long as I'm, like, making enough money to survive.
Yeah,
But
totally.
I've really taken away a lot from our last, after billable hours. I
Mhm.
don't know if you thought about it again, but
Oh,
that
yeah.
really meant a lot to me.
Oh, yeah, I think about it all the time. I think from that conversation, but also, like, in a lot of facets because a lot of clients I see are kind of in a phase of life where they're learning about the person that they want to be or, like, the narratives that they want to carry with them and the narratives that they want to dump, and so it's just interesting, like, having those conversations a lot. Of course, like, you can't help but think about it for yourself, right? And so, what narratives do I wanna hold on to? And if I wanna hold on to it, like, why do I wanna hold on to it, right? So, the narrative of productivity and that, like, roots in those, like, the morality of productivity has been, like, a really interesting point of contemplation for me in a lot of different ways. And I do you know who Casey Davis is?
I do not.
So so she is a therapist who created this kind of model called struggle care, and she wrote a book called How to Keep House While Drowning. And the model is based on these different she calls them pillars, but they're basically like points of like understanding. And really the overarching theme is that care tasks are morally neutral. And so I really love her, like the way that she presents things. She sort of developed this from her own like lived experience. And a lot of her content and like in the book are about similar things, about how we have learned to apply morality to all of these different elements of our life, like productivity and like how we do our laundry and if we wash the dishes, or how we wash the dishes, and kind of working back and thinking of them from a like a morally neutral place, and then deciding for yourself like what matters to you and what doesn't. And like so like one of the pillars is you can't save the rainforest if you're depressed. And so it's about like you can use paper plates if you can't wash dishes, and that's okay. So I think about those concepts a lot in terms of like not just how we take care of ourselves, but just being an adult and like understanding our place in the world and like what we contribute and prioritize and put value on. I think it's just a really interesting exercise to take like dismantle all of it and then decide like, okay, well, if all of that is morally neutral, then what do I want to prioritize and what works for myself and my life?
Right,
So
your
I think it's really
values.
interesting. Yeah.
Like, kind of instead of taking some kind of morality of just this, like, overarching black or white, like, "This is good, this is bad."
Right.
You maybe are looking at, like, your values like, "Oh, this serves my value of justice or of beauty or of peace," whatever, something like that.
Hmm.
I like that, and can I tell you the first time that I kind of didn't know that I was assigning morality to things, and to me, morality is kind of like a good or a bad. You're a
Right.
good person or a bad person, was
Hmm.
around food.
Hmm.
And the idea to that food is neutral,
Hmm.
it honestly broke me a bit because I think I have a lot of insight and knowledge and awareness about a lot of things, and I couldn't believe how this had such a blind spot for the way that I was talking and feeling about eating certain foods. And honestly, I'm a little angry about that because I feel that it's kind of like been a big problem in my life because of food wasn't the problem, it was the way that I was thinking and interacting and also learning about food and diet from the wellness culture and from like just social media and the news. And there's always these articles and from people all around you. Every time you go to a restaurant, they're like, I'm going to be bad and get fries. And I'm like, oh, and so, like, you just and no one knows they're even doing that necessarily. So, like, I think for me, that was a big one. And I it's interesting to start to apply that to other things that I start to, like, feel like, I notice in my mind, like, assigning you're a bad person or a good person. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember not the exact moment, but I remember when I started to develop some awareness around like morality in food too, and how much that blew my mind as like a child of the 90s and early 2000s, like stepping back and really being curious about like why are we calling things like guilt free or like sinful. And we talked about this a little bit last time too, but like yeah, I'm gonna be bad and and like order dessert, and it is just so much a like an ingrained like automatic process that it's like the water we swim in, right? Like we don't know it's water, we're just in it. And so I think I know I remember being like whoa, and then noticing after I kind of had that realization, noticing all of the different like times that it presented itself and having that like really stark kind of shocking awareness of how frequent it really was. And so, yeah, I think applying it to other things is also really interesting, can be really eye opening because there are a lot of places I think I'm sure still in my mind, I don't really have a great awareness that I'm doing it. It's just sort of an automatic process. And so allowing yourself to step back from like all of the things and break it down and again be curious about why you're conceptualizing it that way can be super helpful.
Oh, yeah. That's also a huge perspective
Mhm,
shift and opener.
mhm.
I love that. Yeah, and I like it in context of some of these everyday things, like the idea of adulting, and people are like, "Look, I'm really adulting now because I did A, B, and C," and it's like, well, actually, there's lots of definitions of adulting because I've been doing it since I was 4 with my
Mhm.
family emotionally, sorry if you're listening. But, I mean, do you know what I'm saying? So,
Yes.
there's a lot of areas where I'm, like, so far ahead of the game as far as, like, responsible and
Yeah.
quote here I go again, quote unquote adult. But then like there's other things like that aren't adult that I can't do or that I
Mhm,
always struggle with, like laundry
mhm.
or reading my mail or balancing a checkbook, which I don't know why I said that because no one has a checkbook anymore. But like when we
Thank
had those,
God.
I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I just flat out didn't do it. When we didn't have
Mhm.
internet to check our bank, I just didn't check it and I overdrafted. And you
Yeah.
would just go into the bank and be like, "Sorry, I overdrafted. Can you help me out?" Okay.
Mhm.
So anyway, yeah, I think I love this conversation. I think it kind of like flows in really nicely when we're thinking of like how different generations react to adulting and being responsible and what's good or bad and like how what's our responsibility to others. You were
Mhm.
sharing with me earlier like just something that has been in the media pretty
Yes.
pretty
Yeah.
heavily.
Yeah,
Doesn't it fit?
yeah, I think so because from like a topical standpoint, right? This has been really interesting. I even like have listened to other podcasts about this too, but recently Chapel Rowan has said a couple of things that have gotten some really interesting responses from people about like what her responsibility is to them. And I mean, I feel like at this point we could do a whole freaking deep dive on it, but it is really interesting. So, for those who haven't seen it, first she made some content, I think like a video talking about like how people need to like stop stalking her and stalking her family and coming up to her on the street and like interrupting her day, and being really disrupt and I mean, like, people weren't just, like, coming up and being like, "Hi, I'm so sorry, can I please have a pic" even that we can talk about, but people were going to her sister's work. I mean, it was wild, and she basically made a video that was like, "Please don't do that, like, I didn't sign up for this, and I don't appreciate it, and you all need to stop," and people freaked out. Right? And so there was that. And then she even more recently like canceled a couple of her shows because she is ostensibly, I guess, like needing a break and really struggling or like having a hard time.
Something
And she,
happened before that.
oh, something happened before that.
Yeah, she did a whole series of posts that were very polarizing about
Oh,
the
yes,
vote.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that too.
Oh, wait,
Um,
so no, you're right, she did cancel a few before that
right.
because of that, but then the post happened, and then she canceled more.
Yes. Well, so she canceled a couple shows to perform at the VMAs, and people got upset. Yes, you're right. I skipped over those. Then she made several posts about voting and like how she was not going to endorse a specific candidate and why, and people got really upset about that. And then
Mhm.
she canceled after that, she canceled two more shows, right? Because she needed time or what she has her reasons, I don't know, but it
Mm.
it is really interesting how strongly people have reacted to these decisions that she's made
Oh,
because
I
she's
would
a
love
public figure.
yes, and I wanna get into it because I've been following it both sides pretty
Mhm,
closely,
mhm,
like, seeing when I say following it, literally watching people's TikTok and Instagram
yeah,
talking about it, mainly on TikTok,
mhm,
because that's where they released some of
yeah,
their stuff, but, like, Yeah, it honestly, I can see both sides, and that's the part that's really interesting to me because I don't really have that much of an opinion on that artist. I don't dislike them, but they're not like my I don't have a parasocial relationship with them. They're not like my act like I don't know. I don't really do that to artists necessarily in my own
Mhm.
mind. But yeah, so I'm really curious of to hear what you think about it, and then I can kind of share like, but yeah, I can see both sides, which I know is also polarizing. People are like, you have to choose. And I'm
Mhm.
like, well, I can see kind of where the dialogue's coming and why people think either which way.
I do think it's interesting, and I listened to um, Matt Bernstein's episode of A Bit Fruity called Chapel Roan
I've been wanting
Warren
to hear that.
Fame. Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think there were some really interesting points made. And I don't know, like, I don't know the details as far as like how many tickets were for these show, like what was going on as far as like did people get their money back? Somebody can comment and let me know. I don't know. Did people get refunded for their ticket? Did they lose out on all this money? Obviously, they didn't lose out on their travel costs if they did
That
travel.
the travel
But
costs you do not get reimbursed.
yeah. And you don't, but I mean like, there is an element of risk anytime you are gonna put that much money towards something. Like, the show could have not gotten canceled, but there could have been, like, I don't know, a plane grounding or something, and you might have missed it. Or, like, I mean, this is just one way that your trip got ruined, I
Fair.
guess.
Fair.
Um, and I think it's easier to when something like that happens, to, like, blame somebody, and that feels better because there's, like, a very specific point that we can or person we can point to blame for like why my trip sucked or got messed up. Um, you know, to be honest, like I recognize that you probably bought these tickets to like go to this amazing show and you still could go to this place. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like if
I mean, yeah, that
you bought the ticket, like
yeah.
you could say, "Wow, that really sucks. I still get to go to Paris." I don't know. Like if you have enough money to fund that.
Yeah.
Um and I'm not saying it's not disappointing. And are we owed like perfection from this person because they shot up so quickly? Like they talk about in Matt Bernstein's podcast how quickly Chapel's fame just like shot up. They have like the graphic or the graph from Spotify and about how this is kind of a very typical cycle with women in the music industry
Mm,
that very often they are quickly like put on a pedestal and then quickly vilified and then nothing they do is going to be enough or okay for kind of like a really long time and their options are very often to like burn themselves into the ground or get really quiet and hope that people forget about it and eventually make another project. She seems to be really trying to kind of enter into a dialogue with her fans about it rather than the other two options that were always seemingly kind of the available ones to pop stars or to musicians. And they were kind of mulling over whether that was going to be successful or not. And they talked about parasocial relationships and how typically a parasocial relationship before social media was very, very like distant. And now it
yeah.
really seems much more like a real relationship because Chapel Rowan can get on Instagram and make a front facing video talking straight to you. And it
Yeah.
just feels like she's talking to you. And so how much more the depth of feeling is when something disappointing happens, like she cancels a show, when it really feels like you're more like directly connected with this person versus like it would still be disappointing without that, but it might feel like a different like level or extremity or type of a disappointment or a frustration. And then where is our right, I guess, in how we respond. Do we just say, "Wow, that really sucks. Like, I'm not gonna buy a ticket to their show anymore," or I'm not gonna, or do we go on and, like, give them a death threat? Because that's what happened. And so
Yeah.
I think there's just a really interesting conversation to be had, not just around should she be able to cancel a show or not, like, okay, but just more about, like, how we're interacting with artists and the way our emotions come up around these artists. And I actually learned a new term.
What
I don't
was
know if
it?
you've heard of this term. It's an old term. I'm actually kind of surprised I've never heard it before, so maybe you have. Have you heard of limerence?
No, I have not.
It's becoming more of a thing, and I think it's interesting. I was trying to research because I'm not 100% sure how, like, much the overlap with parasocial relationships could be, but I think there's a strong possibility of overlap with parasocial relationships. But limerence refers to the state of being sort of obsessed with this person that you have not really met or interacted with much, and whether or not they want to be in a relationship with you or like you. And so I've heard a lot more recently in dialogue around, like, the neurodivergent community, like people talking about their experiences of limerence. But I do think it's an interesting conversation around, like, how much is social media and, like, our ability to directly or more directly interact with these huge, like, celebrities who are never going to meet us. We've maybe never met them and never will. uh, like, building up this sense of limerence, which is like this obsession with, like, this person, and they're not the person that they are, but the person we, like, imagine them to be, and, like, this relationship we imagine we could have with them if we had one.
And so, like, yeah, I think it's interesting to have that conversation of like, okay, well, what is your commitment to your customers? And what are your customers' commitment to you, the provider? Like, I don't know. I find that like if we took it factual, like you said, and like maybe look at it that way, I find that very curious because, like, yeah, what at what level is the commitment if that's the product you're selling? And if you go onto social media, you're even more getting intimate. And you know that that's
True.
doing good for you. That, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, you make money off of it. Let's be real. They're making money off of these media accounts. And so, like, but also you're getting more in-depth, like, what if you want to call it, if we want to talk about capitalism, consumer loyalty.
Mhm.
And so, like, I find it interesting because like a lot of people now don't want to operate under a capitalist system, but they are.
Right.
This is still a capitalist system and you still are providing a product and you have consumers that are consuming your product. That's why you're providing it.
Mhm.
I mean, there's other reasons. Art is a whole nother it's very difficult to exist in capitalism as an artist because you're providing way more than a product, but unfortunately, like, that's just how it's existing right now. It's like when you come on to social media and you have a very large platform,
Yeah.
you do have some responsibility, in my opinion. You have influence, you're an influencer. That means you have influence. That means people listen to you. They listen to your every word. And like when you say something, they're going to do it. And I know that that's like part of this parasocial thing, but it's also like biological, it's human behavior. I guess like, so this is where I'm bringing the other end. I didn't love that message personally. I
Yeah.
didn't love the message of, oh, there's problems on both sides. Like, in my opinion, the stakes are way too high in this upcoming election to have a stance in that way when you have thousands and millions of people that you could potentially influence to not vote. I do understand why people were miffed at that. Do I think it's right or wrong? No, but I felt very irritated by and then the part that really got me was her response video when she mispronounced Kamala's name. I
Yeah,
did
that
not
was.
like that. What do you think? What do you think on my kind of bringing out that other end of, like, being curious of, like, it's a job.
Mhm.
You're a human, but you're also working this job. Like, yeah, where are the lines and how does one navigate such things when you are in the public eye and that's how you're making your living, you
Yeah.
know?
It's, like, interesting because she is young, And there are a lot of things that I would have said, and I say this like with a grain of salt, knowing that this is going to be true for my whole life, when I was younger than I am now, that I wouldn't say now. And it has to be tough to have such a presence and feel pressure to like figure out how you can be yourself and also know like that you are like this celebrity now. I don't know how I would deal with that. And I think it's tough because people probably don't deal with that. I mean, when we know people don't deal with that well all the time.
Yeah,
And
there are many, many stories of very tragic.
it's
Yeah.
a both and, right? Kind of what I think what you're saying, I agree, is like we have to explore like this culture that we've created around these people and our own responses to these people who really are just people, regardless of if they have a brand or not. Like at the end of the day, they're not going to say everything right all the time. And their age and like they're in the middle of trying to like figure this out and like figure out who they are and the permanence of the internet, and we're just so reactive so much. I think it's really tough, or it's got to be it's almost impossible to say the right thing and do the right thing all the time. And so I don't know if she would. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens like moving forward, because if it were me, like I cringe at some of the stuff I've said.
I think personally, as a therapist, it's not how you're navigating this very difficult, or it's not the way that like it's not how you're saying things or what you're doing as you're navigating it, it's how you're navigating it.
Mhm.
And I'm saying this as an old person who doesn't do social media like most younger people do. So
Mhm.
like I'm coming from it from that angle of like if I was their therapist, I'd be like, you need an entire support team. This is more than one human can handle.
Right.
Like, let's support you in the ways that you need. So for me, it's not about being perfect, but it's also about like being mindful. It's also about like, in my from my view, getting that support and like
Yeah.
how do you want to keep moving on? And if this
Mhm.
is if this has been a conscious choice, then having a plan for what to do with the fallout. Because you and I have talked about it. I'm so sensitive. One small comment, please don't do this to test me. But one small little comment, and like I might it's really hard. That's something I don't know if I have it inside of me.
Right.
Maybe with the right training. Really hoping that that person has like a ton of support around them, but also some guidance. The responsibility can't lie all on one or the other, in my opinion, when you
I
have a
agree.
relationship. And
Mhm.
even if it's parasocial, when you have a like a financial kind of relationship, like for me, I feel that way with certain corporations I spend money with. I hold
Mhm.
them to certain standards, or I try to, because I'm like,
Right.
wait a minute, I don't think I'm going to spend my money at this corporation or this entity that is funding maybe an organization that I don't like. So I do think it's a two-way
Mhm.
street,
Mhm.
like, and that we can't place all the responsibility on one or the other. And like, I think that we need more space for nuance with this, just like you're saying.
Well, I again, I kind of go back to I think, and this is a learning moment probably, right? Because as a clinician, I would say like, wow, maybe you did sign up for this and there still might be a part of you that didn't think you were going to get quite this response. Um and so it is a both and, right? Because of course like if you're going to make this your career in the culture that we live in our social location, like there are some things you need to know. There are some things, there are some very specific supports that you need to have to take care of yourself. And so I think very often there, and I don't know her, but like, how many times have we thought, well, like, I'm going to do this differently and it'll be great, like, than
Yeah.
any other person that's ever done this. It'll be fine, And
That's
so,
a great point, and my guess is that the music industry, I don't know if she's signed by a major label or an independent label, I should probably pay attention to that, but, like, there are so much
right,
problematic issues within the music industry as far as
right.
getting signed by labels and how they protect you and what supports allow,
Mhm.
and my guess is probably 0. Maybe you get, like, a 1 PR person, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's like a team that are like assigned to you that say, "How can we protect your mental health?" Like, that's not a goal. Their goal is to make money, right? And
Yeah,
so, as long as you're making money, I don't think they give a shit, honestly. And so, you have to find my guess is you have to find your own people that can do that for you, whether that's
right.
hiring people or having people around you. And that's gotta be hard. I don't know. I don't do this for a reason because it sounds like a nightmare. Um, but I do think that, like, it is of a gray area of, like, yes, this is your job, like, this is the world you're operating in, and I can also see as a person who is an artist and who is trying to do something different and new and, like, wants to change the narrative around some things, like, put yourself out there in a new way in this culture, like, there's gonna be some clashing and there's gonna be some, like, it's not gonna go smoothly,
No,
and so
I don't
that's
think
like
it's
I
gonna
think
go smoothly in any circumstance.
experience.
Yeah,
And so, like, and to your, I think that's a good point about, like, your interactions or understanding of, like, corporations and how, like, I don't spend my money, and that's fine. Like, if people are upset or, like, they feel let down by her or whatever, they don't align with her values, then you don't have to, like, go listen to her music anymore.
exactly.
You don't have to,
Yeah,
like, go to her shows. Just
yeah.
like you don't spend money at those, but you don't send those corporations death threats, I don't think.
No, but I might try to complain or try
Okay,
to, like, legislate
but
for
still, that's still
changes.
different though.
Never in my
Right.
life would I send a death threat to anyone ever for under any circumstance,
And
and
so I
I've
think
had reason to,
yeah.
as you know,
Right.
and
And
guess what? Wouldn't do it.
right, and so I think that's maybe some nuance is, like, understanding both, like, her role and how we are interacting with people and treating people based on our own discomfort and disappointment and being let down by them or being angry with what they say. And this is not me saying I agree with her because I felt similarly to what you felt of, like, wow, like, a lot of people listen to you and we need people to vote in this election. And I'm very uncomfortable with this. We're in a time where we're on, like, we're still in this experiment. We're still in this experiment of we have no idea how this is actually affecting people and affecting our brains, and we're probably not gonna know for, like, at least a few more decades, and so everything all of these things that happen in real time are information about how this is changing, like, the ways that we relate to each other and our brains and, like, what we don't might not even know what to do with that right now because it literally is we're like the rats in the cage.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I think when you're placing it in that, like, larger context of we really don't even know exactly how our brains and bodies are being affected, how others' brains and bodies are being affected, and all those things, like, you're right, like, it is an experiment. And, yeah, like, I think it's also an experiment. We're coming in such a politically divisive and divided, like, when I watch those TikTok, it's divided. There isn't, like, a lot of room for nuance or curiosity.
How are you going to take care of yourself this week until our next billable hours, knowing that there's no answer to this?
Actually, you know what? I want to embrace uncertainty. I want to embrace, like, ambiguity and uncertainty. So how am I going to do that? Because you're right. There's nuance and there isn't a solution for tomorrow to make it better for everyone. I want everyone to feel okay. I want Chapel to feel okay. I want the fan. Okay. Let me see. I don't know. Food.
Okay, I
I'm gonna
can.
eat those frozen grapes. And yeah. Can I just go with frozen grapes that have sour stuff on them? Okay. What about you?
So this week, or to get myself through to the next billable hours, I'm going to. Oh, I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks. And I've been trying to, like, balance out my, like, because I get, like, obsessed with podcasts and I get obsessed with like the current events and listening to the commentary on all the current events as we've been talking about, which is hilarious. But I'm trying to balance it out with audiobooks. So I'm going to listen to some more of my audiobooks and not just commentary on the current state of things.
I love
That's
it.
what I'm going to do.
Okay. Well, maybe you can share, maybe we can do like a post on our current, what's on our audiobook list. Because I know you have more than one. I know it.
I have so many.
But yeah, it was fun though. It was interesting.
This
I'll
is
see you on
good.
Friday in real life.
I know. Thanks for joining us, friends.
Oh yeah. Oops.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining us for After Billable Hours conversation. I
Yeah,
hope
you have.
you liked it. I hope you had fun.